Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the broadcast this evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Pleasure to see you again.
Yes, always good to be here on my Thursday tablet. That, when people are talking about foreign policy now, I tend to look intelligent. I don't tell them where it's coming from.
Thank you
when they are
the
talking.
compliment.
Yes, I try to think, what did Prof say a few weeks ago? And then when they said, I start talking about that, they say, where did you know about foreign policy? Don't worry, we study these things. Just a quick note to our viewers. I can see that people are coming in across the different platforms. Please feel free if there is a question you want to ask, you want to contribute to any of the points being made, please feel free to raise your hand. The team will have a look, and I'm sure that I will try to get to you once I get the notification. So please feel free. And if you are going to be talking, please make sure that there is no other device around you, just so that we don't have any feedback during the program. On that note, sir, I wanted to go. I was going to start with something completely different this week and to get your views on. And one piece of news caught my attention. And I thought this is going to be an interesting discussion. It's about Russia. And it's the fact that a few weeks ago, it was the Wagner leader being exiled to Belarus, and all of a sudden there is news popping up this evening that's saying that he's back in St. Petersburg. And I'm sure some people will want to know what is going on with Russia. Has Putin indeed lost his hold, or what is going on there? So let me start from there this week, sir, and then we go to some of the other topics we have lined up.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You will recall when you raised this issue of Russia 2 weeks ago. The metaphor I used was that Russia was like an onion. You peel one layer and there's another layer waiting for you. You peel that one and there's another layer waiting for you. You never really get to you never peel every layer. That is Russia. Always enigmatic. It's an enigma in itself. I don't understand. Most analysts, and that included me, thought going into exile in Russia was for its own safety, and that he should stay away from windows. He shouldn't stand near the edge of any cliff. He should always watch his back and all that kind of thing. And now, here he is, back in St. Petersburg. And incidentally, Putin also comes from St. Petersburg. So they come from the same famous St. Petersburg. I don't claim to understand what is going on. Has the deal gone sour? The deal that was made by the president of Belarus, has it gone sour? Or has Putin changed his mind? Or is it this Wagner fellow who has decided to finally have a showdown with Putin and find out who really controls public support. But there is a battle of minds going on because as the Wagner chap was going back to St. Petersburg, the television stations that were pro-Putin were showing security police breaking into his mansion. That's the Wagner man's mansion, showing, millions of dollars accumulated, showing various passports, showing different types of wigs to indicate that the man often goes around in a disguise. What's going on? On one hand, officially, they are trying to discredit him. And under normal circumstances, my interpretation would be that, they want to first discredit him before arresting him. But he's now decided to challenge Putin by saying, no, I'm back, I am here. What will his present plan be? But the president of Belarus has confirmed that he was no longer in his exile hideout. That is, he provided he was even ever there. Yes, 2 of his planes landed. We saw them landing, and that's last week. But we never saw him coming down the steps of one of those planes. So really, Russia still remains an enigma, and we will just continue to watch developments and try to make any sense of it. But obviously, he has support within the military itself, because there are several top echelons of the Russian military who, since the so-called mutiny or revolution or whatever, have not been seen. They haven't returned from their office back home, and they haven't showed up in their office. So the suspicion is these are people who were in cahoots with the Wagner chap. He also, surprisingly, amongst the ordinary people, they saw him like a Robin Hood, who, yes, was on their side, on the side of the poor people, and he turned his back on the rich and the elite, whose children were not amongst the military that was being sent to die, and probably even amongst the rank and file of the military, he had support. And is this why Putin is hesitating from dealing with him until he has finished, denigrating him? We will just have to continue to, to monitor events and developments.
Last week, we talked about, I think it was last week, we talked about the US government choosing to block Ben Wallace, the defense secretary from the UK, for the role of the head of NATO. And now it seems that he's backing the German defense secretary. What do you think of that pick? Some are saying it's very surprising where he's gone and who he's picked. What would your view be on President Biden's pick for the top NATO role?
Well, she is a former defense secretary of Germany. She's actually been head of the is the EU Commission or NATO EU Commission. She's been head of the EU Commission for the past 2 years. And she's performed creditably. Again, election time, even though it's election within a small organization, there are people who are trying to run her down. And there are people who said, well, given that a woman had never headed NATO, that is a good choice. Originally, the Americans were leaning towards the prime minister of one of these Baltic countries, a very young lady who won an election and became prime minister. But the feeling then, after a series of meetings with Biden, was that she was not mature enough to head NATO. And I think that's why Biden then came down on the side of this head of EU Commission. It will play very well in terms of gender sensitivity. She's not young, so the experience is there. And given the fact that Germany had played a good role on the Ukrainian issue in terms of weapon supply, arms supply, tank supply, even financial assistance to Ukraine, that Germany Germany deserves to be appreciated for the upfront role it has played. So that is really the game. But to give more elbow room, the present head of NATO, they've extended his term by 1 year to allow them for the grooming of this German lady. Not that, I mean, from the way I've seen her perform, there was some within the EU, there was some misogyny when she became head of the EU Commission. There was some anti-female feeling among those, old Dodgers that proved embarrassing a few times. I remember one episode where she had been on the delegation to Greece, I believe, and all the men took all the seats, and she was left standing until, Greek officials quickly, hustled around to save the situation. That was quite an embarrassment. And I say at that time, not for her, but for the men who were on that delegation and who showed how petty they could be. But I think she's won recognition now, and she will make a good head of NATO. if he gets it.
Thank you, sir. While still on President Biden, there was an injunction a few days ago. There was an injunction by a judge in a court in the United States that is preventing the White House from speaking to social media companies in a particular way. And the injunction reads that, and I'll quote what it says here, sir, but it's saying that the White House must refrain from urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner the removal, the deletion, the suppression, or the reduction of content containing protected free speech. That's what the wording says. And I'd like to hear your views, sir, because over the last few years now, social media has become such an interesting place for all manner of thoughts being shared and how people respond to news without even validating. But now that we're getting as far as a judge in the United States now saying there's an injunction on what the White House can actually say to social media companies, what kind of precedence is this setting?
Well, I don't understand that judgment, and that judgment will not last. A court of appeal will overrule, will overthrow that judgment, because if there is one thing that is absolute in American Constitution, is that there will be no inhibition to free speech. It is that absolute. Of course, in judicial interpretation, Justice Brandeis of the American Supreme Court had when they considered, interpreting that amendment to the American Constitution, said it does not empower you to shout fire in a crowded cinema. In other words, the exercise of your right to free speech does not extend to endangering the lives of other people. That is the only, what I would almost call, that's the only slight prohibition on the right to free speech. This one, I don't understand it, but the little that I can make out of it goes against centuries of American jurisprudence as regards no prohibition against the right of free speech. And I don't see it standing. It won't.
While still on the United States, I'm not sure if you saw the news item where former President Trump had supposedly posted the address of former President Obama's home on his social media platform. And not too long after that, an armed man was arrested not too far off where President Obama lived. And over the last few weeks, all kinds of things have been coming out about President Trump, but it doesn't seem to be having an impact whatsoever on the American people, in the sense that his ratings seem to be going up for president. What are your views on that news of what he did, sir?
You know, Trump is a class act by himself. Never came across a chap like him. He could argue that since the press is full of his own, the location of his own addresses, whether it is the Trump Towers in New York, the Mar-a-Lago in Florida, or wherever, that he also could put Obama's private address on his publicly out there. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. I could see him thinking that way, but I can assure you that if I did what Trump had done, putting the address of a former American president on my Twitter account, they will put me in cuffs. It will be regarded as treason because it's like, I'm endangering the life of a former president, somebody who is under the protection of the Secret Service. They will have put me in handcuffs and leg chains by now and, dragged me off to, flung me to some jail somewhere. Especially since now, we Africans have this proverb that the witch screeched last night, the baby died this morning. Who doesn't know that it is the witch that killed the baby? Cause and effect. That shortly after Trump did this, one of the people who has been implicated in the January 6th insurrection was now found lurking around, and who had also put on his own, whether it's Facebook or whatever it is, that, is waiting to see how he can get, a direct shot at the target, was found lurking around Obama's residence. So there is no two doubt that what Trump did, he put the life of another former president in danger. There's nothing. One of the few times Trump told the truth to all of us was when he was running the first time, when he said, I could stand Central Square, and that is in New York, fire a gun and kill somebody, and nothing will happen to me. My supporters will still be my supporters. And he's proving that every day. The 70 million or so who voted for him in the last election are still solid behind him. Nothing that Trump will do will shake that base of his. Biden doesn't have that kind of a base. He's got to go out and persuade those who voted for him in the last election to please stay with him, that is fulfilling all the promises he made to them. That's Biden. Trump doesn't have to be engaged in any such exercise. He could actually sit at home and not campaign at all, and they will still go and vote for him. So, one is not surprised. And the election next year is going to be an exercise in American incredulity. It's going to be. May God spare all our lives, to be alive to see that. It will be very, very interesting because he's got all those cases against him. More are coming out. He still has to face trial in Georgia against trying to, overturn the election. Several cases that he has. So he's going to be facing trial, running. In fact, his supporters will probably say, don't bother, go and face your trial. Don't bother to campaign. We are behind you. We'll vote for you. It's very, very interesting. But all it means is the arrogance that one used to get from Americans about they running the best system in the world. American values are superior to political values, are superior to the political values of other countries and so on. Doesn't hold water anymore. You could have a pushback anytime an American is trying to be arrogant towards you. You can easily have a pushback.
Thank you, sir. I can see a hand raised. Okwe Adekunle. Can you please unmute yourself and make your comment? Very brief, please. Okwe Adekunle. Please go ahead. Can you make your comment, please? Okwe Adekunle, are you there, or was that a mistake? All right.
Maybe that's a technical glitch.
Yes, I'd move on. If you still want to raise a point, please lift your hand up again, and I'll come back to you. Sir, one point that I want to move to is the case about North Korea. A few months ago, North Korea had attempted to send out a satellite into space, and that failed. And the US and South Korea have been able to recover the debris from that satellite and put it together. And one of the statements they made, and I'll quote them on this, they said, after detailed analysis on major parts of North Korea's space launch vehicle, the satellite was salvaged. South Korean and US experts have assessed that they had no military utility as a reconnaissance satellite at all. Are you surprised about that, sir?
No, I'm not surprised. And we shouldn't make too much of an issue out of it, because these things happen. I doubt whether there is any country that, in terms of, research and development, especially in the areas of technology, that there will be any country that to say it hasn't had an accident, that it hasn't had to redefine, the standard of its technology. Just about 6 months ago or so, remember there was an attempt to launch from Virgin Galactica or something, a rocket that will, go to the moon or something like that, and the rocket failed. Yet it left the procedure was for it to fly, to be taken to the height under the wings of an aircraft, and then to be launched from there. Stage 1 was successful. Stage 2 was successful, but then it never got to the height that it was supposed to get to before it turned around and came back down. So, and we had the disaster of the Titan submarine just about 2 weeks ago. So really, anything that human beings are working on will always have the possibility of we will always have the possibility of problems, let's put it that way. So I'm not surprised. But why this has come to our notice and is worth commenting upon is because of the hubris of North Koreans, who always make it sound like, oh, they've achieved what no other country has achieved, or the level of their research and development is so phenomenal that other countries will be surprised. We've just found out that it is just sheer hubris, and the emperor has no clothes on. They will go back to the drawing board. The unfortunate thing in North Korea is the price for failure is usually a firing squad. So I wonder what is going to happen to those scientists who were involved in the development of this rocket.
All right, I'd like to go to the Middle East, but before I do, I understand that there's someone who was trying to raise their hand on the video. So let me come back to you. I hope I'm picking this right. But Mr. Bisi Olaumi, can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much for recognizing me. I just want to take you back to Professor Akinyemi's point on Trump. And my question is it not that the prosecution is mainly political as a stop Trump strategy, because like has been noted, his ratings continues to rise even while he has this case, and that efforts, that the cases in court are part of efforts to stop him from being a candidate in 2024 general election. And maybe on this, I can also point out the fact that what is the implication of the case of Hunter Biden with regards to the tax evasion thing that he admitted that he didn't pay tax as and when due. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bisi Olaumi. For those who may not know him, he was the correspondent in Washington of NANS, the the news agency of Nigeria, when I was a minister, and for quite a while, he was in our correspondent in Washington. He's now one of our university lecturers in international relations here. Your first question is whether what's happening to Trump is not political persecution. And the answer is absolutely not. the American system has procedures for falling back to ensure that prosecution is insulated from political pressure. And that procedure is called special prosecutor, where the Department of Justice appoints a lawyer who has nothing to do with the Department of Justice, totally neutral, and is asked to look into the allegations that are made against a particular individual, in this case, Trump, and find out whether prima facie case can be made so that they can then go to trial before a judge. And surprisingly, in this particular case, the special prosecutor picked by the Attorney General is in fact was a Trump appointee as a prosecutor. And the judge, in fact, I think I'm not sure if I dealt with this issue the last time, that special prosecutor decided to take the case to Florida, which is a Republican state, and where members of the jury are likely to be pro-Trump supporters. Whereas the crime, the allegation of taking out sensitive classified documents, that crime was committed in Washington, D.C., when those documents were taken out of the White House. That is where the crime was committed. And the prosecutor could have decided to have the case tried before a judge in Washington, D.C., where the jurors are likely to be anti-Trump. But he decided to take the case to Florida. And I won't then be surprised if it ends up being a hung jury, if not outright acquittal. So in this case, there's I mean, this is not a third world country. You cannot ascribe political persecution to what is happening to Trump, unless you have, and this is why I told our colleagues that you have a background as a journalist. So you may have investigated this and have been privy to information that we don't have, and that can, at least that you can make a case for political persecution. As regards the Hunter case, yeah, it's a crime. And Hunter, by the way, is the son of President Biden, who's been, again, a special prosecutor was appointed to look into his case. And that one has found out that, yes, one of the cases, not just one of the cases is that he didn't pay tax as when due. He's admitted, and like even we have in Nigeria here, he is, I don't want to say he's doing a deal, but he's agreed he will pay a penalty to avoid trial. He will pay a penalty for it. It's left to the judge to refuse the deal that's been done between Hunter and the special prosecutor. The judge may say, I don't accept this, we will go to trial. But his Hunter has had a very bad, or should not, don't let me use the word bad, a troublesome background. He's been into drugs. He has never really had a stable childhood. Recall his mother and his siblings died in that crash on the eve of Christmas when I think it was a truck that ran into their vehicle. Now, that would be traumatic for anybody, not to talk about, somebody losing his mother and all his siblings. So he's had a very traumatic childhood and a traumatic background. That does not excuse him. Of course, we all react differently to tragedies in our life, but maybe this is why the prosecutor accepted a plea bargain where you will admit your guilt for being charged with a lesser crime, and if the judge agrees, you pay the penalty. And don't forget, there's another case against him because when he was applying for firearms to own a rifle, you have you have part of the area of the form where you will fill is whether you've had any conviction. And he had a conviction over the use of drugs. And I put no there. That is a felony in the United States. And again, he had admitted to that. And if the judge agrees with the plea bargain, for 2 years, he will have to undergo treatment. And if he could keep off drugs for the next 2 years, it will wipe his record clean. I don't want to make any reference to cases that we know of where politicians have gone to jail in the United States, but under American law, and I'm not talking about American politicians, I'm talking about non-American politicians. Under American law, after a few years, if you don't get into trouble again, your record will be wiped off clean. And that has happened. And the politicians have gone on to occupy high office of state. So it happens. I don't think again one could say he's being given special treatment because his father is the president.
Thank you for that, sir. There is a comment here, a question here from Owazia Motala, who says, going back to the issue of Donald Trump, do you think we're about to see an even bigger surge in right-wing extremism in the West on a global scale? And what does this potential surge imply for non-whites in the US and Europe? Apart from the possible implications of right-wing nationalism in the West, with France and Belgium in mind, how could their activities affect the whole world and Africa in particular?
Well, that's a good question, because we have seen electoral swings to the right. If I identify quite correctly, France, we should add Greece to that, we should add Italy to that, and of course the United States, which is the most importance of these countries. Cause and effect. I mean, I hold out that the destabilization of countries in the global south, such as Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and so on and so forth, Libya, even Tunisia, led to the influx of immigrants that are called the legal immigrants because they have no visas. Although I wonder how many of immigrants from the global north to the global south actually have visas and have accurate immigration papers. You see, when these illegal immigrants come from the global north, they are called, technicians. They've come to help. They are developmental agents. When they come to us in the south, when we go up there, they call us illegal immigrants. Nevertheless, it is the influx of these so-called illegal immigrants that had the electoral effect of the swing to the right in those countries. You will always find out that the issue of immigration is played up at election time. And if you look at, for me, one of the tragic events in British history, Brexit, it hung around the fact that, Britain needs to protect itself from all these immigrants who are coming in. Although now evidence shows that since Brexit, in fact, it hasn't gone down. The number of immigrants flocking into Britain has not gone down, but it has had two effects. One is Britain leaving the EU, and two, this long stretch of conservative victory in British politics. So what's going to happen is that you are going to get laws and policies which are against the interests, not of the immigrants alone, but interests of the working class in these countries. Even though ironically, the electoral victory come from the working class, but the policies that you then get from the people that they vote in work against the interests of the working class. But eventually, the swing, the electoral swing, would go back towards, because it just won't work. The anti-immigrant, anti-working class, those policies will not work. And the electoral pendulum will swing back towards the left. But the damage will have been done. But then, this is politics. It goes to the left, and then it swings back to the right, and then it goes back to the left again. It's only in the global south, especially in Africa, that you then have presidents who stay there for life, even when their constitution says there are term limits.
So just to call out one point from what Wazir Mutala said there, in his second point, he specifically called out France. Now, please bear with me. I don't know the gender of the names that I'm seeing here. So please, if I refer to the wrong thing, please bear with me. I assume Wazir Mutala is male. So please bear with me. But what this person is saying here, they singled out France. And it seems to me that if we look at France, France seems to have an unusually high level of destruction of property, rioting for every small thing that we see out there. What's your take on the level of violence we're seeing in France compared to other European countries or maybe other development economies, if we're going to widen that a little bit?
The French have a culture of anarchism since they beheaded their emperor during their first revolution. There's something in their culture which calls for demonstration, violence, destruction of property. And that's why I said it's like anarchism as a game. I know that there are one or two people that I know who are on our platform who are, francophonies. They are experts in French politics, and they probably will be able to. They will be more accurate in the factors they will ascribe to this, burning down of buildings, courts, schools, hospitals. Almost every at the drop of a pin. You will recall it's only when, not quite 4 months ago, that because of the attempt by Macron, it's no longer an attempt, it was successful, at reformation of the pension scheme in France. They almost burnt down the whole of France. Of course, he also then just ignored them and went on a state visit, I believe, to China. But he pushed it through. And after several weeks of demonstration and everything, they all went home, went back to their jobs. And then, unfortunately, the shooting to death of this young man by the police, which again instigated another 5-day round of looting and burning. And there's no other country in the world that I know that goes through what France goes through at the drop of a pin. So that's why I said, in fact, I recall somebody being interviewed, a young lady, about 32, who, during the demonstration for the pension, the anti-pension reform demonstrations. So the BBC correspondent asked her, "You are not even close to earning a pension, and yet you are here demonstrating and so on." She said, "I just love demonstrating." So, I think she's spoken the mind of practically all French people. It's a French tradition. And and then after a while, you all go back home. This one about I hope the judiciary, because they've arrested hundreds of demonstrators, and I hope the judiciary would in applying the law, show wisdom so that they don't go and hand down stiff prison sentences to these young people, some who are 11, 15 rioters, and then that becomes another cause celeb, another justification to start another round of demonstration. But the French, they love demonstrations, and they are never peaceful. They, you know, they rip up, the cobstones on the street of Paris and use that. The insurance rates in France must be very high because somebody has to pay for all that damage that is done.
Yes, sir. There's a question here from Mercy Alogwe, but I think you have answered this. So just to our viewers, I've put a link on of the YouTube channel. This session is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. So if you click that link, you can go back and watch the session, and even previous sessions are also available there. So Mercy, if you don't mind, if you go back to the earlier part of this session, Prof already dealt with that. So what does the indictment and ongoing court appearance mean for Trump's attempt to go back to the White House and his chances at winning the election? So the link is there to the YouTube site. Please click on that. There's a question here, sir, from someone else, Uzezi Ologe. The global West, from the US to France to even Germany, supposedly liberal countries have witnessed a wave of populism that have made these nations increasingly hostile to Black people, particularly immigrants from the global South like Africa. Considering the growing popularity and subscription of white people in these countries to populism, what are the implications for African countries, and what can be done to protect African immigrants, especially in Europe, as they seek more secured existence in these developed countries?
There are two schools of thought on this matter. The first is that is payback time for colonialism, for colonial exploitation. And that therefore the immigrants who go from the global South to these Western countries, they are just, the empire is striking back. They are there, to get whatever they can get in retaliation for the damage that the colonial authorities did to Africa or Asia or so on. But there's something to be said for that, but I don't subscribe to it. No, that kind of thing will get us nowhere. It's like an eye for an eye. What's the result? We all turn out to be blind. I believe that we in the global South, we owe ourselves that responsibility to develop ourselves, to turn our back on this, especially the kind of immigration that goes across the Sahara. They suffer such indignities. You could see what's happening between Tunisia and Libya. Now we are stuck. When I say we, African immigrants, illegal immigrants are now stuck. Tunisia doesn't want them. Libya doesn't want them. And what they are subjected to among so-called our Arab brothers, we shouldn't even think about it. Let us develop our own countries. And Africa, sorry?
Go ahead, sir.
Africa has the largest deposit of mineral resources. Resources that if we develop, we can have the richest people in the world. However, I concede the fact that we are not left alone. Even though colonialism is over, exploitation continues. In criminal law, those who did law will know, in criminal law, both the person who stole the goods and the person who accepts stolen goods are both guilty of a crime. Our leaders steal us blind. They take the money. Where do they take it to? Western banks, Swiss banks, banks in London, banks in France. And those Western countries use those stolen funds to develop their own country while we continue to suffer here. So that's why I said there is that school of thought that that our people can go over there and also have maybe a slice. They will get a slice of the cake, probably a slice of the burnt toast from our own money that is stolen. But if they will not accept stolen funds, public funds from our politicians, then we can use our own money to develop ourselves. Any African leader who tries to do that, they either assassinate, they overthrow. That's the kind of thing that happened to the Nkrumahs, Lumumba. You could list the countries, you could list the leaders, African leaders, Thomas Sankara, who then get assassinated because they want to do that which is right for Africans. So I don't know how we are going to so stabilize ourselves that we can insulate our politics from interference by the machinations of the Western countries.
Thank you for that. So I think I've got Dr. Laomi here. Dr. Laomi, can you please unmute yourself?
Okay, well, thank you, Prof. I'm particularly happy about the point with regards to immigration from the global south to the global north. And the point I want the professor to address is the fact that, and which he alluded to, that the global north continues to destabilize the global south. Many countries where you have leaders who are patriotic, somehow they get them out of the way. And so what is happening, this immigration to the north, I think it will get to a point that they will realize that it is in their best interest to ensure development of the south, because now the immigrants are getting, culturally conscious, and that cannot give them peace in Europe. And then the point about financial exploitation. I mean, I wrote a piece, about Boris Johnson. That they are not in a position to tell us morals about corruption, because London is the citadel of, is the haven of looted money from the south. So how will Africa be able to withstand the political destabilization of countries in the continent?
Okay. Thank you, sir. Let me go back to Prof. Are you there, sir? Okay, good.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Good, sir.
Yeah.
Do you want to respond to that, sir?
No. BC had given the answer to the issues that you raised. But the problem I usually have is we know what to do, but it's how I think we are getting interference from.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
We know what to do, but it is how to do it. How do we protect nationalist leaders from being poisoned, which is the favorite French method, from being overthrown, which is the favorite American and British methods, from being assassinated? How do we protect them? The problem which we still have in Africa is that we are so divided, and that division is exploited. Let me spend 1 minute explaining that. Because when I say we are so divided, other countries are divided. In fact, one of the things I love, one of the methodologies that I used when I was still teaching is when I draw attention to a characteristic in Africa, I immediately draw attention to the fact that the same characteristic exists in Western countries. For example, when I read Susan Rice's book on her foreign policy experience, the chapter dealing with Nigeria, she said she made reference to Abacha's death. She said, in the arms of prostitutes, and that Viagra was a factor in it. And I said to myself, but my hero, my American hero as a president, John F. Kennedy, shared a mistress with a mafia don. Will Susan Rice make use of that as a factor if she were to write a book on American presidents? No, she wouldn't. But it's okay to use it as part of her reference to a Nigerian leader. Then she made reference to Nigeria itself as a country that dwells on conspiracies. We are conspiracy feathers. How many Americans still believe till today that Kennedy was not killed as part of a conspiracy? 70 million Americans today still believe that Trump won that election, that the election was stolen. Will she use those data to refer to America as a country that dwells on conspiracies? No. And yet that is what for us, in the sense that, that is an African-American scholar. And yet she's bought into this, things they use to try and demystify us in Africa, which she wouldn't use in America. But if I was still teaching in an American university, that is what I would have used to destroy that book and destroy our own reputation. However, while we in the global south cannot use divisions in France, divisions in Britain between the Welsh and the English, the division in America or in Canada, why we cannot use it against them. They will come here using their intelligence agents to exploit the difference between the Yoruba and the Igbo, the difference between the Igbo and the Fulani, in order to upset the system and destroy whatever balance we have here. That is the advantage they have over us. So how do we protect our nationalist leaders? How? That is the answer that's the question I have no answer to. We know what we have to do. We have to produce nationalist leaders. We know we have to protect them from being undermined. But how? They will go to our military. How much would they have to pay a battalion in order to carry out a coup against a nationalist leader? Look at what France did between Ouattara and I can't remember the name of the leader that they overthrown, whom they then took, to the International Criminal Court, who at the end of the day found him not guilty, but they had overthrown him. They had installed, their own preferred candidate. So it is that how that perhaps we scholars should turn our attention to. How do we build this nationalism, the national cement that will then make us one? Nkrumah did, because the Ghanaians used to make fun of Nigerians at that time. Oh, you Nigerians are tribalists and so on. See, we in Ghana, we are one. We don't, and yet, at the end of the day, they still overthrew him. And people on this platform know how close I became to Rawlings. And Rawlings told me that you Nigerians just didn't know that we had our own problems between the Ashanti and the Ewe, between the Ewe and the Tui. He said we did, but it's just that, we didn't play it up, but we did. And it had political ramifications. So it is that how that I will welcome a good, robust debate. How do we build nationalism? Not by words. Oh, we all can play with words, but in actual fact, the details, how.
Thank you, sir. And on the note of the how, I was thinking of how do I make sure I don't go past 18?
You mean we've already gone past that time?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But thank you very much. I think that conversation should probably continue next week. There were some points on the Middle East that I wanted to touch on today. For example, in Afghanistan, we're starting to see some of the more drastic rules being put in place. And maybe we'll start with the Middle East next week and some of the bit about Israel as well, and some of the rockets that have been fired in both directions. On that note, thank you everyone for joining this evening. Like I said, please have a look at the YouTube link, subscribe to that channel. You get the notifications once we go live every Thursday. And sir, thank you very much for this evening. We'll be back again next week. And yes, Wakanda, Africa in the lead. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Good night, everyone.